Welcome, lost souls. You've just stepped into Lilith Alaster Official, a place where horror meets passion, and every heartbeat might be your last. If you love eerie tales, dark romance, and spine-tingling short stories that blur the line between the living and the damned, you're in the right place. I publish a new story every week, each one a descent into something a little more unsettling, and maybe a little more beautiful. So if that sounds like your kind of night, leave a like, whisper your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to join the growing coven that gathers here every week. And for those who want to go deeper into the darkness, to support my work and unlock extra perks including full ebooks and audiobook versions, you can join my Patreon. The links are in my bio. Thanks so much. Now dim the lights, take a deep breath, and let the story begin. Step into the suffocating silence of an abandoned biohazard facility where the only thing more dangerous than the darkness is your own loneliness. In this chilling psychological thriller, a famous adventurer named Joe Smith descends alone into a forgotten cavern, seeking glory and conquests to fill his hollow heart. Instead, he stumbles upon 3 ancient sentient slimes who offer him exactly what he has spent his life running from: unconditional love that erases the very self he tries to protect. As the blue bioluminescence pulses in rhythm with his heartbeat, Joe's arrogance crumbles under the weight of their hypnotic embrace. What begins as a terrifying encounter transforms into a seductive trap where every memory of failure and every fear of abandonment is gently absorbed, leaving nothing but peace. But at what cost? When the final barrier falls, does he find salvation in eternal belonging, or has he simply become another ghost haunting the walls? Witness the moment a man stops fighting his demons and lets them consume him completely. This is a story about the terrifying allure of surrender and the price of finally being seen. Will Joe be saved by love or erased by it? Chapter 1. The flashlight beam cuts a shaky path across the concrete, revealing warnings painted in faded red letters. Caution, biohazard, keep out, their message worn to near illegibility by decades of neglect. Joe's boots squelch against a floor carpeted in phosphorescent blue, the wet sound swallowed by the oppressive silence that presses against his ears. He sweeps the beam left, catching a rusted laboratory bench littered with glass beakers that have long since turned cloudy, their contents evaporated into dark stains. Condensation drips from overhead pipes, each droplet landing on his leather jacket with a soft plink that echoes through the corridor like a clock counting down. Sweat beads along his brow, and he pauses to wipe it away with the back of his hand. His silver watch catches the eerie glow of the fungi, throwing a brief flash of light across the wall before he lowers his arm. The humidity clings to his skin, thick and warm, making his shirt stick to his chest beneath the jacket. He should have brought water. He should have brought a lot of things. A backup crew, a satellite phone, maybe a gun. But Joseph Smith doesn't do backup crews. Joseph Smith walks into the dark alone, and Joseph Smith walks out with a story. He grins at the thought, a flash of white teeth in the blue gloom. Slime monsters, he mutters, his voice a low rumble that dies quickly in the heavy air. That's what they'll say. Joe finally lost it. Saw slime monsters in a hole. The laugh that follows is hollow, swallowed by the silence before it can even reach the walls. He keeps walking. The corridor narrows, then opens into a wider chamber where the fungi grow thicker, their pulsing rhythm more pronounced. The blue light seems to breathe, expanding and contracting in waves that match something deep in his chest. He notices it before he can stop himself, the rhythm of his heartbeat aligning with the glow, synchronizing without his permission. A chill runs down his spine despite the heat. He turns back toward the archway he passed through, raising the flashlight to illuminate its stone frame. The beam catches carvings he hadn't noticed before, symbols worn smooth by time but still visible in the shifting light. They look almost organic, like branching veins or roots, spiraling inward toward the center of the arch in hypnotic patterns. The roar comes without warning, a grinding, thunderous crash that shakes the ground beneath his feet and sends dust exploding into the air. Joe spins, the flashlight beam wild across the chamber, finding only a wall of collapsed stone where the archway once stood. The dust cloud rolls toward him, thick and choking, forcing him to cough and cover his mouth as it settles over his lungs. When it clears, there is no exit. The blue light pulses. Once, twice, steady. No, he breathes, the word escaping before he can stop it. He rushes to the rubble, hands pressing against the jagged stone, pushing with all his weight. Nothing moves. The rocks are massive, interlocked, as if they had been in place for centuries. He pounds his fist against the largest slab, the impact sending a dull shock up his arm. No, no, no. His voice cracks, the control slipping. He hits the stone again, harder, feeling the skin split across his knuckles. The pain is distant, muffled by the adrenaline flooding his system. The light changes. He feels it first. A shift in the temperature, the air growing cooler despite the humidity. Then he sees them. 3 figures rise from the cavern floor like water drawn upward by some invisible force. They emerge without sound, without warning, their translucent blue bodies solidifying as they ascend, taking shape from the same substance that carpets the walls and floor. They are women, or something like women, their forms elongated, graceful, with subtle contours that suggest hips and shoulders, and flowing hair that merges back into their bodies without end. Joe backs away, the flashlight beam trembling in his grip. What the hell? The tallest one glides forward, her movements fluid, hypnotic, as if she is not walking but flowing across the stone. Her eyes are large, white, glowing. 2 points of light that fix on him with an intelligence that makes his stomach drop. She stops inches from his face, close enough that he can see the patterns swirling within her translucent body, constellations of blue shifting in slow motion. Then she speaks. Her voice does not come through his ears. It whispers directly into his skull, a melody that bypasses sound and lodges somewhere deep behind his eyes, resonating through his bones. The words are soft, intimate, as if she has known him his entire life. You have been looking for us, Joseph. Her sisters encircle him, their cool tendrils brushing against his trembling hands. The shorter one presses against his legs, her form warm and grounding, while the middle one giggles, a sound like water dripping from a cave ceiling, and wraps around his arm, pulling it gently toward her. We have been waiting so long for someone like you. Joe's mouth opens, but no words come out. His confident smirk has vanished, replaced by a mask of terror that he cannot hide. The flashlight slips from his fingers, clattering against the stone, its beam dying as the bulb shatters. Stay with us, the Queen's voice continues, sweet and suffocating as honey. Let us love you completely. Let us erase the hollow space inside you that conquests have never filled. He shakes his head, a weak, jerking motion. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. Her form presses closer, her surface cool against his cheek. You have been running your whole life. From women, from commitment, from yourself, we see it all, Joseph. We have always seen. The middle slime's tendril coils around his wrist, her giggle echoing through his mind. Just let go. It feels so good. We promise. Or leave, the Queen adds, her tone sharpening slightly, though only slightly. Leave and never find another soul again. Wander the world alone, filling the void with empty victories that taste like ash in your mouth. Joe's breath comes in ragged gasps, his chest heaving as the 2 smaller slimes tighten their grip. The taller one's face hovers before his, her form shifting, features emerging and dissolving in fluid motion. A mouth that smiles, then vanishes, eyes that blink, then smooth over. The trap was laid long before he arrived, not for him specifically, but for men like him, for every adventurer who thought the void inside could be filled with trophies and fame and fleeting touch. They had been waiting for centuries, refining their lure, perfecting their method. And he had walked right into it. The keeper's voice murmurs from behind him, soft and grounding. Home. Safe. Forever. Joe's knees buckle. The slimes catch him before he falls, their bodies cool against his burning skin, their embrace both prison and promise. The blue light pulses in rhythm with his heart, steady and inexorable, as the chamber seals itself around him like a tomb. Chapter 2. Joe's fingernails scraped against the stone, the sound sharp and wet in the silence of the cavern. He dug them into the narrow seam where the archway had sealed, prying, clawing, feeling the tender flesh beneath his nails split and tear. Blood welled up, dark crimson against the gray rock, but he did not stop. He could not stop. The panic was a living thing inside his chest, clawing its way up his throat, choking him with its urgency. Behind him, the blue light pulsed. Steady. Patient. He threw his shoulder against the stone, grunting with the impact, feeling the shock travel down his arm and into his spine. The rock did not move. It had not moved for centuries before he arrived. It would not move now. "Come on," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Come on, come on, come on." His hands slid down the stone, leaving bloody streaks in their wake. The moisture from the cavern walls mixed with his wounds, creating a thin pink film that dripped onto the floor below. He pressed his forehead against the cool rock, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his body shaking with the effort of holding back the scream that wanted to tear free. They watched him. He could feel their eyes, or whatever passed for eyes, fixed on him with an attention that felt almost hungry. He turned slowly, his back still pressed against the sealed arch, and faced them. The three slime girls stood in a loose semicircle, their translucent bodies shimmering in the bioluminescent glow. The tallest one, the queen, regarded him with those large white eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone, straight into the panic coiled in his gut. The middle one, with her indigo swirls and frantic energy, shifted her weight from side to side, her form rippling like water about to boil. The smallest one remained still, her milky body dense and grounded, anchored to the floor as if she had grown from it, and they were amused. He could see it in the way the queen's form tilted slightly, in the way the whisperer's lips, when she bothered to form them, curled into a knowing smile. "What are you looking at?" Joe spat, the words coming out sharper than he intended. The whisperer giggled, the sound echoing through the chamber like a stone skipping across a pond. She separated from the collective, her body stretching into a long, sinuous tendril that coiled through the air toward him. Joe pressed himself harder against the stone, but there was nowhere to go. Her form wrapped around his forearm with gentle, insistent pressure. The contact was strange, her surface cool to the touch, but beneath it he felt a warmth that seemed to radiate from somewhere deeper, as if her body were a shell containing a furnace. The goo seeped through the fibers of his leather jacket, finding the gaps between the stitching, and then it touched his skin. He gasped. It was not pain. It was something far worse. The sensation spread through his arm like a current, intimate and invasive, reaching into his pores, into the spaces between his cells. He felt her inside him, not physically but in some deeper way, as if she were learning the architecture of his body from the inside out. He yanked his arm back, hard. Her grip tightened. The tendril thickened, coiling twice around his forearm, and she giggled again, the sound closer now, right beside his ear, even though her face was still several feet away. "Let go of me," Joe growled, his voice low and dangerous. The whisperer's form shifted, her face emerging from the mass of her body. 2 bright eyes, a mouth that curved into a teasing pout. "But you feel so good," she murmured, her voice overlapping with itself, the words echoing slightly, as if 2 of her were speaking at once. "So warm. So alive." Joe brought his free hand up and drove his fist into the queen's chest. The punch connected with a wet slap, his knuckles sinking into her translucent body up to his wrist. He expected resistance, the solid impact of flesh and bone. Instead, he felt only a ripple pass through her, a wave of pleasure that traveled across her surface and made her form shiver with delight. Her laughter filled the cavern, soft and pitying. It came from everywhere, from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. "Oh, Joseph," she said, her voice a chorus of overlapping harmonies that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to the fear inside him. "You cannot hurt us. We have no flesh to bruise, no bones to break." He pulled his fist free, stumbling backward. The whisperer still clung to his arm, her grip unbroken. The keeper moved then, her dense form flowing across the floor like honey, pressing against his legs from behind. Her weight was enormous, grounding him in place, her surface warm against the back of his knees. "Get off me," he snarled, trying to shake them loose. The keeper did not move. The Whisperer tightened her grip. He kicked out, his boot passing through the Queen's body without resistance. She rippled, reformed, and looked at him with something that might have been affection. "Every punch, every kick," she said, her voice drifting closer as her form glided toward him, "only brings you deeper into us." Joe's arrogance crumbled. He felt it go, piece by piece, as the slimes pressed against him from all sides. The fight drained out of his muscles, replaced by a sinking realization that he had no weapons they would feel, no force they would yield to. "Okay," he said, his voice cracking. "Okay, look, I have money, a lot of money. I can get you anything you want. Equipment, resources, a way out of here, whatever you need." The Queen tilted her head, her form elongating as she leaned closer. "We do not want your money, Joseph. Fame, then. I'm famous. I can make you famous. People will know about you, worship you, bring you offerings. We do not want your fame." "Then what do you want?" His voice rose, desperate, cracking at the edges. "What could you possibly want from me?" The Queen's face emerged from the smooth surface of her form, lips, eyes, a nose that appeared and dissolved and appeared again. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful and terrifying thing he had ever seen. "We want everything you are, Joseph. Every fear you have hidden, every dream you have abandoned, every part of yourself you have given away to strangers in dark rooms. We want the hollow space inside you that no conquest has ever filled." Joe's breath caught in his throat. The words hit him like a physical blow, striking somewhere deeper than his chest, somewhere he had sealed shut years ago. "We want to love you," the Queen continued, her voice softening to a whisper, "until there is nothing left of you but love." The Whisperer's tendril loosened slightly, sliding up his arm, tracing the line of his jaw. The touch was gentle, almost tender. The Keeper pressed closer, her warmth seeping through his jeans, into the muscles of his legs, easing the tension from them despite his will. Hours passed. He could not say how many. Time had lost its meaning in the blue glow, in the constant pulse of the fungi, in the rhythm of the slime's movements against his skin. His shoulders slumped. He caught himself leaning into the Whisperer's caress, his head tilting back, his eyes fluttering closed. The sensation was warm, soothing, like sinking into a bath after years of cold. Some distant part of him screamed in protest, but the sound was faint, muffled by the growing comfort that wrapped around him like a blanket. He opened his eyes and saw the Queen watching him, her expression unreadable. The Whisperer giggled softly, her fingers, when had she formed fingers, trailing down his chest. The Keeper murmured something against his back, her words dissolving into his skin. Hatred flickered behind his eyes. He tried to hold on to it, to nurture it, to let it burn hot enough to push them away. But the flame was weak, and the slimes were patient, and the hollow space inside him was so very, very empty. And he was so tired of being alone. Chapter 3. Time dissolved in the blue dusk. Joe had stopped checking his watch days ago, or was it weeks? The silver face still ticked, its hands moving through their mechanical dance, but the numbers meant nothing in this place where the sun never rose and the fungi never dimmed. They pulsed without rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, as if they breathed in time with something deeper than his heart. He had lost his shirt somewhere. He could not remember taking it off. The Whisperer had helped, perhaps, her cool tendrils sliding beneath the fabric, easing it over his shoulders while he sat slumped against the cavern wall. Now she was coiled around his bare torso, her indigo form molding to his chest like a second skin, her surface cool and warm in equal measure, shifting to match his temperature. She was speaking again. She was always speaking. That night in the hotel. "Joseph," she murmured, her voice a stream of overlapping whispers that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The blonde from the bar. She said she had to leave early. But you knew, didn't you? You knew she was running." Joe closed his eyes. The words slid into him like water finding cracks in stone. "She left because you were already gone," the Whisperer continued, her form tightening slightly, pressing closer to his ribs. "You were never there." "Not really. You were already thinking about the next one, the next conquest, the next empty victory." "Stop," he said, but the word had no force behind it. And the one before her, the redhead who cried afterward, she wanted you to stay, Joseph. She wanted you to hold her. But you were already reaching for your phone, already lining up the next one, because staying would mean facing the silence inside yourself. His hands, resting on his thighs, trembled slightly. The whisperer's tendrils traced the lines of his arms, following the veins, mapping the geography of his skin. Behind him, the keeper pressed closer, her dense, milky form warm against his back. She did not speak. She simply absorbed his tension, drawing it out of his muscles like moisture from stone, replacing it with something heavy and soft that made his eyelids droop. "Tell me about your father," the keeper murmured, her voice a low vibration against his spine. He shook his head. "No, tell me." The words came anyway. They tumbled out of him like water from a broken dam, carrying debris he had buried for decades. He wanted a son who would settle down, take over the business, marry the girl next door, have kids. The keeper's form shifted, molding to the curve of his shoulders. "And what did you give him?" Joe laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. "A son who chased monsters into holes in the ground. A son who spent his inheritance on documentaries no one watched. A son who couldn't sit still for 5 minutes without needing to be somewhere else, someone else, anything else. He was disappointed in you. He was ashamed of me." The words came out raw, scraped from somewhere deep. "He told me once, at my mother's funeral. He said she died hoping I would change, that I would grow up, that I would become a man who could be loved." The whisperer's laughter died. She grew still against his chest, her form cooling slightly. "And after that," Joe continued, his voice cracking, "I proved him right. Every time. Every woman I used, every record I broke, every mountain I climbed alone. I proved him right." The keeper's arms, when had she formed arms, wrapped around his waist from behind, pulling him into an embrace that felt like sinking into warm water. "You have been running your whole life, Joseph. Running from the shame, running from the silence, running from the boy who was never enough." He did not answer. He could not. The tears were coming now, silent and hot, sliding down his cheeks and dripping onto the whisperer's surface, where they dissolved into her indigo depth. The keeper held him. The whisperer held him. The queen watched from the shadows, her elongated form still and patient, her white eyes reflecting the blue glow of the fungi. He slept. The dream came, as it always did now, rising from the depths of his exhaustion like a tide. He was floating in an ocean of blue, the water warm and thick, pressing against his skin with gentle, insistent pressure. There was no shore, no horizon, no sky above him. Only the endless blue, pulsing with light, breathing with a rhythm that matched his own. He sank deeper. The water filled his lungs, but he did not drown. He breathed it in, felt it spread through his chest, warm and sweet, dissolving the hard edges of his heart. Below him, shapes moved in the depths. 3 figures, their forms shifting and flowing, reaching up toward him with arms made of liquid light. They were waiting for him. They had always been waiting. He woke with a gasp. The slime residue coated his lips, thick and sweet, lining his throat and filling his lungs. He could taste it with every breath, feel it moving through him, becoming part of him. The taste was addictive, like honey dissolved in warm milk, like the comfort he had never allowed himself to want. The whisperer was still wrapped around his chest. The keeper was still pressed against his back. But now the queen had emerged from the shadows, her elongated form gliding toward him across the damp stone floor. She stopped before him, her white eyes fixed on his face, her surface shimmering in the blue light. She reached out. Her hand, translucent, elegant, formed from liquid that shifted like slow glass, touched his cheek. He did not flinch. The contact sent a shiver through him, but it was not fear. It was recognition. Her touch was cool and warm at once, intimate and impersonal, as if she were reading him through her skin. Her thumb traced the line of his jaw, gentle, reverent. "Joseph," she said, her voice a chorus of harmonies that resonated in his skull. "You have fought so hard, for so long, against yourself, against a love that waits for you in the quiet places. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The whisperer tightened her grip around his torso. The keeper pressed closer. The queen's hand slid from his cheek to the back of his neck, drawing him forward until his forehead rested against her cool surface. "Let go," she whispered. "Let us hold you. Let us love you until there is nothing left of you but love." And somewhere in the depths of his mind, a voice that might have been his own, or theirs, or both at once, whispered back, "This is what you have been searching for. Through every empty conquest, every hollow victory, every night spent alone in a crowd. This erasing love, this endless belonging, this home." He closed his eyes. The blue ocean rose around him, warm and welcoming, and he stopped swimming. Chapter 4. The three slime forms began to move. Not toward him, but toward each other, their bodies flowing like water seeking its own level. The whisperer unwound from his chest, her indigo form stretching into a long, shimmering ribbon that curved through the air. The keeper released his back, her milky body sliding across the stone floor in a slow, deliberate wave. The queen stepped forward, her elongated form rising to its full height, her white eyes fixed on his face. And then they merged. It was not violent. It was not chaotic. The three streams of blue converged in the center of the cavern, their colors blending into a single column of translucent light that pulsed with the rhythm of his heartbeat. The queen's calm authority, the whisperer's frantic energy, the keeper's grounding warmth, all of them dissolved into one presence, one voice, one overwhelming embrace that pressed against every inch of his skin. Joe did not move. He could not. The column surrounded him, rising from the floor like a living wall, curving inward until it formed a dome that encased him completely. The blue light filled his vision, his lungs, his thoughts. He was inside them now, inside her. The merged slime pressed against his back, his chest, his thighs, his face, holding him in a cocoon of cool warmth that seemed to support him from all sides at once. "Joseph." The voice came from everywhere. It was the queen's melody, layered with the whisperer's playful lilt, and the keeper's soothing murmur, all woven into a single chord that resonated in his bones. He felt it in his teeth, in the marrow of his spine, in the soft tissue behind his eyes. "We have seen you, all of you, from the beginning." The cavern dissolved. He was standing in his penthouse, the one overlooking the city, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows that made him feel like he owned the world. The party was in full swing around him. Beautiful people, expensive champagne, laughter that bounced off the glass and marble. He was smiling, holding a drink, telling a story that made the women lean in and the men clap his shoulder. But the camera of his memory zoomed in, past the smile, past the drink, past the expensive watch on his wrist, into the hollow space behind his eyes, where a smaller version of himself sat alone in the dark, waiting for the guests to leave so he could stop performing. The vision dissolved like morning mist. Another took its place. He was on a mountain peak, the wind whipping his hair, the sun setting behind him in a blaze of orange and gold. He had just broken the record for the fastest solo ascent. His crew was cheering below. His phone was buzzing with messages from sponsors, from fans, from women who wanted to congratulate him in person. Zoom in. Past the triumph, past the adrenaline, past the photo he would post to his millions of followers, into the same hollow space, where the smaller version of himself sat with his knees drawn to his chest, staring at the darkness that the sun could never quite reach. Another memory. Another. The nightclub in Berlin, the hotel room in Tokyo, the after-party in Los Angeles. Each one the same. The conquest, the thrill, the crash, the hollow. The desperate scramble for the next thing that would make him feel whole, followed by the inevitable emptiness when the thing was won and he was left alone with himself. The slime held him through all of it. Her presence did not judge. It did not condemn. It simply observed, absorbing each memory as it passed, understanding him in a way no one ever had. Not his mother, not his father, not the women who had shared his bed and left before dawn. "You have been so tired, Joseph." The words were not a question. They were a statement of fact, spoken with the same certainty as the color of the sky or the wetness of water. and he felt the truth of them in his chest, in the ache behind his ribs, in the exhaustion that had been following him for so long. He had stopped noticing its weight. So tired of being Joseph, so tired of the performance, so tired of the hunger that never stops. He was crying. He did not know when it had started. The tears were hot against his cheeks, sliding down his jaw, dripping onto the blue surface that held him. The slime absorbed them, took them into herself, and in return she gave him something he had never felt before. Peace. It was terrifying. It was more terrifying than the collapse of the archway, more terrifying than the first touch of the slime against his skin, more terrifying than any monster he had ever hunted. Because peace meant he had nothing left to fight, nothing left to prove, nothing left to run from. His trembling fingers rose to his face. He touched his cheek, his jaw, his lips. The skin was still there, the bones were still there, but they felt distant, as if he were touching them through a layer of water. He was still Joseph Smith. He still had a name, a face, a history, but the slime was seeping into the cracks. Every doubt he had ever buried, every longing he had denied, every fear he had locked away in the basement of his psyche. She found them all, filled them with her cool warmth, smoothed them into something that no longer hurt. "Let go," she whispered. "Let us hold you. Let us love you. Let us erase the lonely self that has been suffering for so long." He opened his mouth. He was going to scream, or sing. He was not sure which. The distinction had lost its meaning. The sound that came out was neither, a raw, wordless vibration that rose from somewhere deep in his chest and carried with it the last fragments of his resistance. The slime poured in. It was sweet. It was cool. It coated his tongue like honey, slid down his throat like warm milk, filled his lungs like water that did not drown. He tasted the whisperer's playful laughter, the keeper's nurturing warmth, the queen's patient love. They were inside him now, as he was inside them, the boundaries blurring into something that felt like the first real embrace of his life. His body went slack. The slime caught him before he could fall, her form molding to his weight, supporting him as his legs buckled and his spine curved. His head lolled back, his eyes fixed on the ceiling of the cavern, where the bioluminescent fungi pulsed in a rhythm that was no longer separate from his own heartbeat. The last coherent thought in his dissolving mind was not fear. It was not regret. It was not even sadness. It was relief. He no longer had to be Joseph Smith. He no longer had to conquer anything. He no longer had to fill the hollow space with victories that turned to ash. He only had to surrender. He only had to let himself be held. He only had to let the blue ocean rise around him and finally stop swimming. The slime's surface rippled over his face, covering his eyes, his nose, his lips. He did not struggle. He did not want to struggle. The darkness behind his eyelids was warm and blue, and somewhere in the distance he heard the voices of 3 women singing in harmony, their song carrying him down into depths where the lonely self could not follow. He was not Joseph anymore. He was not anything. He was only love, dissolving into love, and that was enough.